Growing up, if you told me I would end up as an agricultural scientist, I wouldn't have believed you. That is because from as far back as I remember, I was told I was going to be a medical doctor because that's what clever girls do, clever girls and boys. So I didn't give much thought to what I was going to do besides medicine or why I was going to do it. I was simply going to go to university and fulfill my mission, be a medical doctor. So after the first year, or going through the first year of university, I found out there were many other clever girls and boys. And when I didn't make the cut to medical school, I was at crossroads. And I went to the one person I knew I could get advice from. I went to my father and asked him, what will I do now? And he told me, you are good in math, so maybe you should do math. And with math, you can do anything. You can get into engineering, computer science, and it sounded like a brilliant idea. So I set out to the university to go and enroll for maths. On the way there, I remember that day, I met a friend of mine, Angela, and she asked me, Kalenga, where are you going? I was like, oh, I'm going to the School of Natural Sciences to enroll for maths. I was like, really? Good luck with that. There's a long queue of students there. I'm just from the School of Agricultural Sciences, and within 5 minutes, I was done. I was like, oh, that's an idea. So you can imagine my father's disappointment at the end of the day when I told him I had enrolled in agriculture. He was like, agriculture? And I consoled him. I said, it's not really agriculture. I'm going to do agricultural economics. So I'll be an economist. So I went into the School of Agricultural Sciences with a goal to major in economics. Towards the end of the year, at the end of a lecture, one professor approached me and asked me what I planned to major in. And I told him I was going to major in economics. And he asked me, have you considered plant sciences? I was like, not really. Then he told me, the benefits of plant sciences, and something catchy that he told me, he thought I would excel in the plant sciences, and that really caught my attention. And so from then on, I set out to do plant sciences. Not only did I set out to do plant sciences, I wanted to be everything this man was. He had gone to UC Davis, I was going to go to UC Davis. He was a professor, I was going to be a professor. And so my journey began. So I excelled in the plant sciences, and at the end of the 5-year study, I was returned by the university as a staff development fellow. I then went on to do my master's at Stellenbosch University. But my story really begins when I enrolled in my PhD. So here I was, a simple girl from a very simple background at my dream university. I was at Cornell University. And the plan there was simple. I was going to get in, and for 4 years, I was going to focus on my research around sweet potato storage, and I was going to go back home and do big things. But I didn't know what was coming ahead, and things quickly changed. So 1 year into my study, just when I was about to get into my research, and I remember the previous, like a few weeks earlier, I had been pitching my proposal to my supervisor. So a few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. Here I was, an unmarried woman, pregnant in a foreign country. So I went to my supervisor and I told him, and he was shocked. He said, what about all those plans we had, we talked about? And he said, your life will never be the same. I said, okay. I then informed my sponsors, and I remember I was sponsored by an alumni at Cornell, and I remember, his name is Chris. I told him, I said, I'm pregnant. And he said, okay, does this mean you're quitting? I said, not a chance. I know where I come from, and I know what's at stake. Quitting is not on the cards. So I had a plan. I was going to have this baby, and this baby was going to go home to my mother, and I was going to continue. But alas, that wasn't to be. because a few months down the line, I developed complications. And these complications landed me in hospital. And I had a premature baby, very premature, just 600 grams. And he was very sick. At that point, I didn't know what I was going to do. So my parents, of course, they were very disappointed about how things turned out. But they were determined to support me. And I remember they used to tell me, they used to joke and say, we've told the whole village that our daughter has gone to Cornell and she's going to be a doctor and you are going to come back a doctor. So my father, who at that time had just finished theology training and was going to go to the eastern part of Zambia to do some mission work, decided to abandon all that. And he came to the US. So the biggest challenge I had at that time was childcare. So he came to the US and supported me by taking care of my son while I tended to my lab work. Not only that, my son needed 5 surgeries, and we had to travel from New York to Texas for that. And sometimes I could not get the time to go, and my father walked me through all that. So at the end of that 3 years, I had done most of my data collection. I had to write my thesis now. Then my father decided to come back home. This was during the COVID pandemic, for a brief visit, and he was going to come back. And he was going to come back to help me through the last bit, because my son also had one more surgery upcoming. Unfortunately, when he went back home, he got COVID and he passed away. As you can imagine, this was completely devastating for me. This is a man that had walked alongside me He had walked alongside me for 3 years. And he looked forward to this. I remember we had attended a friend's graduation. She was from Zimbabwe. Zimbabweans and Zambians have this thing. So I remember we had even attended my friend's graduation, and my father was telling me about how he was going to dance during my graduation. More so because he himself had enrolled in university but had not finished. So he was really living his dream through me. So I couldn't go on. I couldn't continue. Everything around me reminded me of my father. At that point, I even had a strained relationship with my supervisor because I was not a good student. Things were up and down for me. So I decided I was going to get a leave of absence. I was going to pack up and go back home, which I did. But prior to leaving, I had applied for the One Planet Fellowship. The goal with that fellowship was, in my head, I would be done with my PhD. One Planet Fellowship would not be helping me with my PhD. What they would be helping me with is widen my research horizons, but also develop leadership skills. So I went back home, not having completed my PhD yet. And when I went home, the plan was, in 6 months, I'm going to get the writing done. But that didn't happen. I kept extending my leave of absence for 2 years. And I choose to focus on this part of my story because I want to highlight some of the ways the One Planet Fellowship helped me to achieve this goal in my life. There are many other people that played a huge role, and my mother, friends, and many others, but I want to highlight what the One Planet Fellowship did. So the first thing I want to say is that it provided me a mentor. When I left the US, my supervisor said, I understand. You've gone through a lot, and it makes sense that you want to go. So it felt like he did not have expectations from me. But being tied to a mentor, and this mentor, this is someone I have always looked up to. This is someone that has inspired me. And it sort of gave me someone to be accountable to, someone who expected something from me. And so, she doesn't know, but sometimes in the corridors at work, I would run away because I knew what the question would be. How far have we gone with that submission? And I remember sometimes we had one meeting, and she said, I think the problem, because we had set a purpose roadmap, the first hurdle I needed to get through in that purpose roadmap was to get that PhD. And then everything else would follow. So I was kind of stuck. So I remember this one meeting where she gave me tips of how to write. How can you get through the writing with the dissertation? So that's the first thing. It gave me, the One Planet Fellowship gave me a mentor. The other thing that the One Planet did for me is that every quarter we needed to write progress reports. And that for me was a difficult exercise because I didn't have much to report. But it served as a motivation to get up and try again so that the next time I could have something to report. So that really helped me. The third thing that helped me was going for those meetings. For me, the story was the same. I was writing my thesis and I was going to submit. But I didn't really believe it myself. But here I was at these meetings, meeting young people, vibrant young people that were determined to change the world. And they really inspired me. And I thought they had it all figured out, you know. But upon closer interaction, I realized that their struggles were my struggles, but they were forging ahead. So that really inspired me. I was determined to get that work out. So what I would do is we would go into the sessions the whole day, then would have dinner at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. But then I skipped that dinner. I would go to my room at 6, sleep, and wake up at 2 a.m. But the end of that 5 to 7 days, I had my first full draft of my thesis. And I remember when I sent it to my supervisor, his response was, so there is a light at the end of the tunnel after. Yeah, so I worked through it, and in December 2023, I finally graduated a PhD. With a PhD in post-harvest physiology or plant biology from Cornell University. And I chose to share this bit about my life to inspire someone, because life is not that straightforward. Things will be thrown at you, but giving up should never be an option for any of you. Whatever journey you're on, it might be in that PhD, in that research, or whatever it is, the only way we can change the world is by not giving up. And also, we have a responsibility, because not many of our small farmers, men and women, have had the opportunities that we have had. So they are looking up to us, and so we should not give up. And from sharing my story, the take home for me is, or something I would like to share with you is, as you go through whatever journey you are going through, you'll be met with many bumps. For me, what helped is to share my dreams with people that cared about me. Share your dream with people that care about you. It could be your parents, your spouse, your sister, your mentor. And in those times when you're not able to carry yourself along, they'll be there to carry you along. Thank you.